Good morning. Today is the 22nd day of December 2015, and we continue with our interviews with disciples and devotees. Today it is a great honor for me to welcome a friend, an artist, a patron of the arts, and a wonderful soul, Maurice Shukla. Welcome, Maurice.
Thank you, Narad. Thank you, Narad.
How did you first hear of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother?
Well, the story goes back a long time.
That's getting to be for all of us now.
Yes. Because I should start with my father. Now, my father, he was 18. It was the beginning of January. And he went to see his uncle in UP, somewhere near Allahabad. And as is the custom in many Indian houses, they love to have New Year calendars on the walls. And so this uncle of his, I should look at the... So this uncle of his was living in this little town in UP. And there was a calendar. As soon as you entered his house, there was a calendar on the wall. And on this calendar, a map of India with about 50 faces of the Indian revolutionaries. Now, my father enters, he was 18 years old, and his eyes go straight to one face. He says, "Who is this man?" Aurobindo Ghosh. He felt he had a very deep connection with this man. So he asked him a little bit about who this man was, what he had done. And his uncle explained to him that he had been a revolutionary much before Mahatma Gandhi came onto the scene. And that in prison he had a life-changing experience where he realized that his work was not just the liberation of one country, but the liberation of the entire planet and humanity. My father, who spoke only Hindi, who read only Hindi, had to wait 17 years before he got the first copy of a work by Sri Aurobindo translated in Hindi, and that was The Mother. He read the book and he said, "I knew he is my guru." Now, my father was a poet, and so he spent a lot of his time in a secluded kind of a little cottage in a village, and spent a lot of time in solitude. And in 1946 or thereabouts, he made his first visit to Pondicherry to have darshan of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother.
Oh.
And my father had one very, very important, let's say, point of anchoring, and that was he wanted to share with his entire family whatever spiritual experiences he was to have. And so he would come to the ashram for darshan, and he would always bring somebody from the family with him. Now, in 1953, end of 1953, he came here with his wife and 3 daughters. The eldest one was 14. And as soon as the train reached the station, she got down, this 14-year-old girl called Arun, and she started singing and dancing and telling everybody she was finally home. And my parents were so, astounded by this experience of the daughter. In any case, they stayed for a week. They had the darshan. And after a week, it was time to go back to UP. And Arun just would not get into the train. She said, "Pitaji, that is father in Hindi, please leave me here. I don't want to go back because this is home for me. And so my father explained to her that it was not possible for people to stay back because they had been given 1 week of permission to stay in Pondicherry, and the guest houses were very full at that time, very few and very full, and so they had to go back. She was literally stuffed into the train. She cried all the way, didn't eat anything for 3 days, and sometime after she got back home, she passed away. And the doctors were left completely perplexed because there was nothing physically wrong with her. In any case, my mother had lost her 8th child then. And she started getting a recurrent dream. And in this dream, she would see this girl she had lost running, and my mother is trying to catch up with her. And she turns around and tells her mother, "Ma, just look behind, there's somebody asking for you." Now my mother turns around and sees a little baby lying in the middle of the street crying. Now that was about the time I was miraculously conceived. My mother was 46 and I was conceived around that time. Now, my father would come back from time to time to UP and spend time in this little hut in the middle of paddy fields, wheat fields. And I remember still as a 3-year-old boy, 4-year-old boy, going in the evenings with my mother, carrying his dinner, and in this dim lit kind of evening sky, I would place his food outside. There would be some conversation between my mother and him, very little. And so for me, my father represented a kind of figure that aroused fear, living in the dark for a 3-4-year-old boy. And so I was kind of 24 hours a day, I was all the time with my mother. Now, in early 1960, I was with my mother in UP, and we get a postcard from my father saying, "There's very good news. Mother has accepted our son into the ashram school." My mother was very, very happy. And she had to take me by train and drop me in Pondicherry. Now we get on the train, we are coming down to Pondicherry. Now suddenly in the middle of the journey, she has a kind of a panic attack, saying, "But this boy has been all the time with me. He will never accept to live with his father. What are we going to do about it?" And this thought was it's ruined her entire journey. Because I heard this from my sister who was also accompanying her. Now, the train arrives in Pondicherry, at the Pondicherry station. I get down, and I don't know what happens to me. I start singing and dancing and saying, "I'm home again."
My God.
My mother hears me say that, and all her worries just vanished. And she suddenly probably understood that a past soul had returned to continue the experience with the mother's world.
I want to ask you, just in passing, if you remember anything your father said about his darshans with Sri Aurobindo and Mother.
You see, my father was somebody who was very reserved. He spoke little. I would see him right from the morning when I woke up, reading Life Divine or Synthesis of Yoga, and always in Hindi. And so we spoke very little. But the only time he would be enthused with emotion and joy was if I asked him questions about the mother and Sri Aurobindo. And every time he spoke about his darshan or his connection with the mother and Sri Aurobindo, there would be tears in his eyes. It's like it was not just one life's fulfillment, but previous life's aspiration that had been finally answered in this compassionate acceptance of him and his family into the mother's arms. And so he would get always very emotional talking about this, connection with the mother. And since the connection was purely non-verbal, it was much deeper. And he always spoke about this incredible sense of protection and warmth that he experienced every time he was connected to that presence. And what I liked about my father, what touched me profoundly and has in fact influenced me a lot in my own seeking, is that he referred to this connection not just in physical terms. He was always plugged into this presence. And I have a photograph I would love to show you. I have a photograph of my father during the darshan, balcony darshan of the mother. And you see all these people, hands folded, looking up, eyes open at this amazing figure up there. The only figure whose palms are folded, but his eyes are closed. And he is swimming in the mother's presence in another dimension, where he never lost her. Because my father passed away when he was 88, and again his passing was a beautiful moment of celebration for me. And so this constant connection with the mother, not just physically, but inwardly, has been the greatest gift my father has given me. And I really try to live that connection myself.
How old were you when you came in 1960?
I was 5. I was 5 years old, and my mother had to go back. And very strangely, she was leaving after lunch at the dining room. And I remember I climbed up a mango tree in the dining room and hid myself because I was scared that my mother would take me back. And everybody below was looking for me. My father was really desperate, saying, where has this fellow disappeared? He has to give his mother a farewell hug before she leaves, and he's nowhere to be found. Until some sadhak spotted me on the tree and forced me to come down, and I gave a very reluctant hug to my mother. And my father just couldn't believe what was happening, And I had such a feeling of rootedness in this place that I never, ever felt the absence of my biological mother. I had found my large family, and I was supremely happy.
Could you tell us a bit about your first memories of meeting Mother?
My first memories of the mother are very, very funny in a way, because that time Mother used to appear at the balcony at 6:15, and so we were a bunch of children, and we would all be standing, in the first rows on the road, the Senteur Road, and we would be, drinking in her presence with our eyes, totally focused. But then as soon as we saw her retreating, then the focus was not her. Slowly the focus was towards the left. All the kids were getting ready. Who could run and reach the dining room first? And so as soon as Mother's last hand disappeared, our race to the dining room would start. So for me, this memory of Mother darshan at the balcony was full of childlike joy and, absolute spontaneity. And this has been my really very first memories of the mother's darshan. But then I'd like to share with you, Narad, a kind of a feeling. It's very physical, I would say. When I went to see the mother, I always had a feeling I would be sitting on the steps, and then when my time was announced, I would get up, turn towards the mother's room, and I would feel a kind of a pure white river of light flowing out of this room. And I was always perplexed. Where is this light coming from? There must be some very powerful, spots like this. It was this kind of light, this kind of pure white light flowing out of the room. I'm saying, why are they doing all these, putting these spots into the mother's room? Why does she need these spots? And then I would climb up the stairs, get into the room, and I understood. She was the source of that light.
Now, you came in 1960. So did you see Mother in the second floor or the third floor when you had your interview?
No, at that time, my memory is not very, very clear about, but until 62, the mother was appearing on the first floor balcony. And so we were seeing the mother not on the second floor. That happened after 62.
Right.
But this memory I'm speaking to you about
that was when she was
in the second floor.
Okay.
And the moment I was in front of her, it's like this light was just flowing out of her. And the moment I was inside the room, this light kind of became like a huge cloud of pure, softest cotton. And I could just plunge into it. There were only two people in that world, she and me. And I felt in absolute security. It's like, a kind of a mother's warmth in the form of this pure white cotton that was enveloping me. Now, Narad, I'd like to, I don't know if it is pertinent, but whenever I go to the Matri Mandir, I don't spend much time in the chamber. I don't know if you remember when you come down the ramp,
yes,
and then you take that little staircase to go out. Now that's exactly that experience of light flowing out of the room. So what I do is I go down and then I see this light and then I go back up. And I keep doing this 4 or 5 times because it feels like I'm back into that mother's, atmosphere.
Without going into the chamber.
I just keep doing. Yeah. And one day, an Aurevillian was there and she looked at me and she said, she kind of was very, very respectful of what I was doing. And when I had finished, she asked me, she said, Maurice, can you tell me what is it that you feel in that? So I told her about this experience of, light flowing out of a room, and I got that there, and...
I'd like to ask you a bit about the old sadhaks whom you knew. If you can tell us some stories about them. People are always interested because they're no longer with us.
It was very strange. First of all, my original name was given to me through my father, because my father had a very good friend in the ashram whose name was Chandradeepji. And he has translated a lot of books by Sri Aurobindo and the mother in Hindi. And he was a man who was really, talking about this light that is connected with the mother. he also was somebody who glowed with that light. I mean, his complexion, he was radiant. And he was the gentleman, the sadhak, who sent my father this name that was given to me before I became Maurice in 1968. And that name was Matri Krishna, the mother's Krishna. And so as soon as I reached Pondicherry, our first contact, my first contact was with Chandradeepji in the press. He used to live in the press at that time. And I remember I met him, and that absolute beautiful simplicity of the man, dressed in white, spotless white, the skin hand in hand with that spotless whiteness, the look in the eyes, of such pure tenderness and light again. And he hugged me and offered me a piece of ashram bread and a banana. And I tell you, Narad, even today, I still have the taste of that bread, the fragrance of that bread and banana. And for nothing in the world, I don't think there's any delicacy that can beat the taste and the fragrance of that first bite. I was biting into this mystery of the ashram, So right from my, coming, it was strange because Chandradeepji lived in the press. I made a lot of friends who were all much older than me, really grown up old people. Now, one of them was Fonida, and he too worked in the press. And Fonida also was a real sadhak, very quiet, but exuding that tenderness, that sense of love. And he was so gentle with me, and he would treat me, like his son. And so Ponida, Chandradeepji, Borinda, I had a lot of old sadhaks, and I don't know why, but I would feel so much at home with them. It's like I was really part, and they were really part of this same family. And so there was this sense of comfort, a tremendous sense of being in one station, And all my life I've had wonderful, relationships with these older sadhaks. I still remember Chittuda, who used to serve rice in the dining room, and the kind of poise and serenity and always love and tenderness that accompanied this very simple gesture of giving rice, It was like he was in meditation, but it was not one of those meditations where you are totally abstracted from the world, because there's always this glow of love and tenderness. So there's always this connection with this physical world.
I must say that this has been my experience also.
Yes.
From the very beginning, it was the older sadhaks.
Yes.
Purani,
Yes.
Nolini, Pavitra, Parichand.
Yes.
Can
Parichanda.
Can you
yes.
speak about some of them?
Oh my God, Parichanda, wonderful. What a sadhak Parichanda was.
Yes.
And such incredible aristocracy in the posture of this man. I used to go and sit with him in the garden behind the school. And, these were living examples that sadhana had to be done in this life, in the daily activities of life, and one can incarnate that connection with the inner being in this day-to-day activities of life, without losing that sense of love and humanity for everyone. So Parichanda was one. Jayantilalda. Now there you have an absolute aristocrat of, the mother's sadhaks. I mean, what aristocracy of the spirit. And I've had the privilege of not only knowing him, but working with him. And I can tell you that, he has remained for me as a glowing example of a model, really, a role model of what a sadhak should be. I used to walk with him into government offices because he had asked me to, take charge of INTAC, when INTAC opened in Pondicherry. Jayantilalda said, I will accept if, Maurice, you agree to take it up. And I said, anything for you, Jayantilalda. And so I would enter government offices with him, and as soon as this sadhak, dressed in, very simple white dhoti and kurta, would walk into the office, all the officers would spontaneously get up out of respect and love for this man. And they would give him their total attention. And he had this incredible capacity of conveying his message with tenderness and firmness at the same time. And so Jayantilalda was there, then Biharida, again in the dining room, beautiful. And Narad, I'd like to share with you something that I have not shared with anyone really. But since this is something that is very, very deep in me, it is obvious that I was coming back. My sister's soul was coming back in my body.
You've experienced this.
Yes. We had the same experience at the station. It's unbelievable. And this kind of connection that I've had with this soil, that I didn't want ever to leave this soil. And I felt that if I were to leave this soil, I would also die, I've had this sense of connection that goes far behind time, much earlier. In fact, the very first days of Sri Aurobindo's coming here. And I feel a very strong connection with, I don't know if you've heard of this sadhak called Muni.
Yes.
Suresh Chakravarti.
Certainly.
And while I was translating his some of his letters, and it kind of inwardly, there was a kind of a resonance, and I could feel so close to this man. And this is why probably, I don't know, maybe I have been here even earlier, and this is why this connection with the elderly sadhaks comes to me so spontaneously. And I really felt I was a little boy with all these old sadhaks, but I felt one of them.
Yes, yes.
It was amazing. It was just amazing. And like even today, I come out on the balcony and I breathe this air, I look at the sky, and I look at the trees, and I look at the mother's flag, fluttering on Golconda. And I said, my God, I've been seeing this for lives together. Not just in this life, I've been seeing this for many lives. And it's such a deeply fulfilling feeling, and there is such an ocean of gratitude, that the divine has allowed you, this grace and this privilege.
Do you recall any moment when you met Sri Aurobindo?
No, I was, in this particular life, I came here in 60, so...
No, I meant within inner experience.
My memories of Sri Aurobindo's darshan as a human person are not there. Not there. And my connection with Sri Aurobindo remains extremely secret and personal.
Good.
And it is more my connection with the mother that has been in the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I get into his room, A lot of old memories kind of flood back, you know. And I mean, these are feelings that are too deep for tears, really.
Yes.
Too deep for thoughts.
Let's take a break for a couple of minutes.